Hello, and welcome to part 2 of Lesson 1, the Introduction to Solidworks. In this part, we are going to be making an actual part. That's exciting. So this is the part we're going to make right here. It's pretty simple, but it's actually going to cover a lot in the process of making it. So, the topics we're going to be covering today, we're going to be talking about bases, fillets, cuts, then bosses with holes, which is similar to bases, and then all of these are going to require, these three are going to require sketching, and in sketching we're going to be talking about lines, tangent arc circles, deleting lines, smart dimension, troubleshooting, and constraints. And then we're also going to be talking about some common errors and editing parts, because that's very important to be successful in SolidWorks, is to know that. So, let us begin. And here we have the completed part. Well, that was a fun tutorial, wasn't it? You're all done. Okay. But in all seriousness, let's actually get to work. So I'm going to create a new file, and I want a part. So I'm going to click OK. Then here we are. Once again, it's a blank space, but if you remember from the last part, we actually have 3 planes here, which once again I'm going to show. But once we start building things, they're just going to start getting in the way. So if you think about the part, you have the top, which is going to be the up and down, the front, which is the front, so if you're looking at it, it's the front, and the right plane, which is the side one. We are going to start from the top plane. So in order to make anything, you actually have to start with a base. So there are 2 ways to have, dang it, I didn't get rid of email. I'm going to put a black box over that and quit email. There we go. I don't remember where it was. I can just cut that out. Okay. Dang it, Sam. Okay. So you need to make sure when you're creating a part, the first thing you need to do is actually create the base for the part. So there's 2 ways to do that in SolidWorks. You can either do an extrude or a revolve. Today we're going to be talking about extrusions. So click on Extrude Boss Base. And what that's actually going to do is it's going to sort of skip a step. And dang it, okay. I don't want to do it this way. Okay. So when you're creating a part, you actually need to start off with a base of some sort. And in SolidWorks, there's 2 ways to do that. So you can have an extrude boss base or a revolve boss base. And you have to start with one of these, and that's why all these things are grayed out for now. But as soon as we have one of those, they'll come back. So when you create an extrusion or a revolve, for that matter, but we're going to be talking about extrusion today, you need to start off with a sketch. So a sketch is a 2D surface, or it's a 2D sketch. And from that 2D sketch, you're going to be extruding outwards or revolving or any number of things into a 3-dimensional base or boss or mesh or however you want to call it. So let's start off with a sketch. And now it's going to ask us for a plane. So we need to be able to sketch the sketch on somewhere. So right here we can click on the top plane. And now I'm going to hide these because, I'll leave them for right now. So I'm going to zoom in right over there and up here. So we have a bunch of tools. We have line, circle, spline, rectangle, arc, ellipse, slot, a polygon, and a fillet or chamfer. Oh, and then also text and a point, and these things are just sort of hard to see. And then smart dimension, that's important. All these are important, but let's start off with a square. So you see the little drop down right here. The square is sort of like a menu, so or rectangle technically. So there's multiple kinds of rectangles, and that's just how you go about drawing it. So the corner rectangle, you take 2 points, you draw from one to the next. I'm gonna undo. And then the center rectangle is what we're gonna want right now. And so you click 1 point in the center and then 1 point out there. And one thing that you want to make sure you do is you don't draw your rectangle out there because that's just in the middle of nowhere. You want to make sure that you have it on the origin when you'll see that little yellow thing to the right of the mouse, which has little dots intersecting, lines intersecting, and that says that it's intersecting right there. And like I said, it's kind of hard to see, so I'm going to go ahead and turn these back off. I'm going to hide them. So now, I'm actually going to delete this so you can see. Normally, all you're going to see is right here is the origin, and then you have a vertical and a horizontal line. So I'm going to put the square back. And now I'm going to, oh, and I hit escape, by the way, to get out of that. Now we're going to come to Smart Dimension, and Smart Dimension is a very powerful tool. So you can click on a line or anything really. And I want to say, or I'm going to drag that out, click. Let me do that again. Undo. So I'm going to go to Smart Dimension, click on the line, drag it out, and click to place it. And I want to say that this line is going to be 44 units, which is millimeters long. And then I'm going to do that for here. You don't have to just click on a line, though. You can also click on 2 points. So I can say I want there to be 44 millimeters between those 2 points versus this line. It's essentially the same thing. But that's it. Now we have our square, which is fully defined. And you can tell that because all of the lines are black. If you came back over here, I think I went a little too far. These lines are blue, and that means that they're undefined, so you can go ahead and move them around. And ideally, you want to have all of your lines be black, which means the sketch is fully defined. I'm going to put these back, and I'm going to come over here to exit sketch, or you can go over here and exit sketch. So now we have a sketch. But that's just a 2D surface. It's not technically a surface. It's just a sketch. There's nothing. So we're going to have to come to the extrude boss base now. And if you saw like, oh, here's a file tree, and you can see that here's a sketch. But as soon as we come to the extrude boss base, the file tree is gone. It actually just moved over here. You can click on the drop down and select, I want that sketch. And let's extrude this up by 5 millimeters. And click OK. Now we have a base. And I'm not going to do this for every single part, but you can go ahead and name them. Actually, I'll do that at the end. So now that we have a base, all of these things are available to us. So we can make cuts, we can make fillets, we can do these, which are some of the more advanced stuff. But for now, I'm going to do a fillet. And what that's going to do is it's a rounded corner. And rounding your corners is always a good idea because it is a better weight distribution. Things won't get stuck. It looks nicer. So I clicked on fillet, and it's going to ask us for items to fillet, which are edges. Or you can do faces, and it'll fix stuff for you. And I'm going to select my 4 edges right there. And it doesn't look like it's done anything, but that's because right here it is set to no preview. You can set it to partial preview, which will show 1, or you can set it to full preview, which will show all of them. Now, depending on what you're doing and depending on how powerful your computer is, you may or may not want full preview on, but I personally like to keep it on always. So I'm going to click the check mark, and now we have a rounded square. So what else are we going to do? We're going to put holes in the rounded square, but not with a hole wizard, with the extrude cut. So first, the extrude cut works in the exact same way as the extrude boss base. So we're going to take a sketch, and you don't have to sketch on a plane either. You can sketch on any surface. So I can click on that face right there, and now we're over here in this weird view, and it's kind of hard to tell where we are relative to the sketch. So the perspective is a little bit messed up. So if you do, let me show you how messed up it is first, so you get an idea. If I'm going to draw a circle, that kind of doesn't really look like a circle because it's all over there and it's confusing. So what you can do is you can do Control and 8, and that's going to center your view around the normal or just perpendicular to the surface you're working on. So it's very helpful with sketches. So I already drew one circle, so I come to the circle, I'm going to draw 4 circles. Doesn't matter how big they are, we're going to come back and dimension them all. Excuse the cough. So, smart dimension, let's go. So I'm going to choose this point and this line right here, and I want to say that this is going to be 10. And I'm going to do the same right here. You will be 10. And I think if you zoom, there's not really a black dot. There's a black dot, you just can't really see it. That the center is now fully defined. It's not going anywhere, even though I'm trying to drag it. But the outline still is, so let's say that you are 5. And then we also want to do these circles too. Actually, let's call you 6. That's one of the cool things about Smart Dimension. You can come back and change it later. So I'm going to say that I want 24 between these. And click on these. Click on these two. And bring it over here. And let's say we want them to be horizontally aligned. So we're going to say that there's 0 in between there. We're actually going to come back and change that because that's not the ideal way to do it, but I just like this to show this is a possibility for right now. So I'm going to set the rest of these in a square using the same technique, and I will be right back. Wow, wasn't that fast? Okay. So, hopefully your sketch looks something like this, where you have all of your circles. There's 6. Doesn't really matter where you place the smart dimension, if it's like this, where it's across the diameter, or it's out over here. They're all 24 millimeters apart. This one is 10 from the edge. And we should be good. And we can exit the sketch. There's the sketch. And then we're going to come to extrude cut. You can click on it over here before you go into extrude cut, or you can select the sketch. You can just click on the sketch directly. But that's kind of weird because I drew 4 circles and only one of them's going, is cutting through, and that's because of these contours. This is one of the things you may run into if you select the sketch over here instead of the whole thing on the left side. The easiest thing you can do is just clear selection, and then for the majority of the time, it's going to do what you want it to do. It's going to just do the default cut or extrude. But what this can be used for is if you want to say you only want some circles or something to that, something like that. If you only want some circles, then that's what selected contours is used for. So now we also have a drop-down box over here, and the extrude boss base has a very similar one, but I'm going to talk about it here in the cut. So first, by default, we have blind, and that's just going to be a number. So you tell it a number, and it's going to cut that far. You have through all and through all both, and through all both is the same as through all, just both sides. So what that's going to do is it's going to say no matter how far down this goes, it's just going to cut through all of it. You have up to next, which can be useful if you want, say, something like this surface. So you can, instead of saying I want it to go up to, or you can say I want it to go up to a surface or a vertex, something like that. I have to be selecting that, so I can say I want it to go up to that surface or that face. Up to vertex is similar, up to surface is similar, offset from surface, I think the rest are self-explanatory, and then midplane is like blind, but instead of going down one direction, it's the same distance, but it's in the middle of the plane, and there'll be an example for that. So for now, I want this to go through all, and I will click the check mark, and there we go. Now we have a little kind of waffle thingy. So I'm going to make another extrude boss base. And as you notice, I didn't click sketch immediately because you don't actually have to do that. SolidWorks is going to figure out, like, I think he wants to make a sketch. So I click on extrude boss base, and then I can say I'm going to click on the front plane, and now we're sketching on the front. Look at that. So here we go. I have selected the line tool, and I'm making sure that my mouse is going to turn a little orange dot right there. Oop, not smart to mention line, orange dot, that means it's going to start right there. We're going to go up, and then over, and then down. Okay. So now we want some rounded corners, so instead of doing the fillet like we did there, we're going to be using the tangent arc, which is right here. And this is pretty cool. It takes a little bit of messing around with to get it to, there we go. SolidWorks is trying to figure out what you want to do. Sometimes it doesn't quite know. So that's going to allow you to draw an arc. I hit escape right there to get out of it, and I'm going to draw one over here too. And let's draw another line connecting them. Okay. This, if you're looking at it, it's probably kind of weird looking, admittedly. This is all over here, and oh goodness, it's a mess. So these lines, if you notice, have some little green things around them, which are called constraints, and those are constraining them to certain attributes. So like this one has a little horizontal line, which means that this line is always going to be horizontal. And if you zoom in over here, except it won't get bigger, this one's saying that it's tangent. So the circle, or this arc, is always going to be tangent to that line. So let's start by adding a few. So right here, we want this one to be vertical. So now that's going to be vertical. And this one is horizontal. But also, we want to make sure that these arcs are tangent so that they look nice. And then this one's tangent. And there we go. I think we also need to say that this is going to be 16 tall. The radius of the arc is going to be 3.5. And there we go. So that looks like a nice sketch. So let's try and exit the sketch. And, well, nothing's here. That's kind of weird. We have the selected contours menu. So like, if we try to click the OK button, it says the sketch cannot be used for the feature is, because, I cannot read, is used for a feature because an endpoint is wrongly shared by multiple entities. Okay, so that's one of the common errors you may encounter. I'm going to close out of this. And then we're back in the sketch. And it's pretty obvious in this case, but it's not necessarily going to be as obvious in all cases. So what SolidWorks is trying to do is it's looking for closed shapes that it can call as like a loop or a shape that it can extrude. But right now we have this shape right here, but we also have these lines going down here. And SolidWorks is seeing this shape and it's like, okay, I know what to do with this, but oh, there's some lines, and I don't know what to do with the lines because I can't extrude them because they're just lines. So what we're going to do is we're just going to delete that. You can select it and click delete, and that is how you delete parts of the sketch. This arc right here, it's blue now. Why are you blue? Okay, so I think it's because this is not tangent here either, so we can do that. Oh, and this is, okay, goodness. So I'm going to do Control 8 again. Once again, this arc doesn't have a size. So there's, like, if you want to do before, you could say smart dimension this and call it 3.5. But there's some better ways you can do that with constraints. So one way is you could take these points and say that they want to be horizontal. Or you can take these points, you can call these horizontal. Or you can take these curves and say that they're equal to each other. And we'll exit the sketch. And now, once we come back in and select the sketch with the extrude, well, that's also kind of weird, because like if you look, I mean, I had my square, like it came up and around. Why is it this weird U shape? Yeah. So why is it the weird U shape? It's actually because this is still not a complete sketch. it's trying to figure out what you're trying to say with just a line, and it's going to extrude around that with the thin feature, but we don't want that. Let's go back and edit the sketch. I'll show you how I did that again. Right click and edit sketch. And I'm going to take a line from here and pull it out to here. And that didn't draw. I don't know why I didn't do that. Let's try it again. Line from here to here. And there we go. Now this should work. But one of the really cool things about extruding in with sketches is that you don't have to extrude once and then cut through it again. You can actually extrude with a hole in it. So let's just stick a circle right there because let's say we want a hole there. We exit the sketch, come back to extrude. Oh no, we're having the same problem again because right here, the very tippy top, the lines are touching and it doesn't know what to make a vase or not. So you don't want to have circles right up on a line like that. So we're going to put a circle here and a circle here. And I'm going to call this one 5. I want this one to be 10 away from the edge, and this one to be 10 away from the top. How does that look? That looks a little too far away. Is 5 from the top? I don't remember my measurements. It may have been 7.5. Let's call it 7.5. There we go. Why not? So there's actually only one more measurement we need to do with Smart Dimension, and that's just this one right here. We need to say that this is 7.5. It's away. Oop, that's 5.8, not 5. 7.5. And we can call these horizontal, just like we did there. So we're calling those 2 points horizontal. So now that this is horizontally constrained, but the circle itself is still blue, we can control select those two and say that they are equal. And there we go. And click on the exit sketch, and this should be good to go now. So if we do extrude boss base, and now I'm going to do the mid plane. Yep, just like that. So if you see, there's the plane that we sketched it on, and it's right between the two. So if you increase it or decrease it, it's still along the plane. And I'll click the check mark, and there we go. So the video is getting a little long. I'm going to do one more feature, and then I'm going to split this up into a third part right here. So I came back to fillet because I want to fillet this edge, because if you look at this, it's like a T shape. And this, if you have a part, especially a 3D printed part, this is going to break very easily. So you can create a fillet on the inside of there. And just for the sake of it, I'm going to say I want this to be 15. I want it to be 20. There we go. Okay. So it just disappeared because the fillet was too big that it went over these holes and wasn't sure what to do. So keep that in mind when you're making fillets. What I actually want this to be is 3.5. There we go. So here's the basic part. I want to do a little bit more in another part. But that's essentially your first part. You know what? Actually, this shouldn't take too long. I'm bad at saying that. So from this, if you, I think I changed my mind a little bit on some stuff. So like this first layer right here, I want to change it because I made these holes 5, and I really like that all these holes are 5, or these holes are 6, and I want them to be 5. So I'm going to come back to the extrude cut and edit that, and oh look, this is a mess. Why did we ever do something like this? So I'm going to right click and delete all the smart dimensions because, oh, this is so ugly. And we can do so much better than this. So we still need a few. We have the 10, the two 10s, Then we have the 24 vertical and horizontal, and we have the 6. But these are still loose and free to move wherever they want to go. We don't want that. So I'm going to select the 2 center points for the circles, and we're going to call those horizontal. I'm going to select the 2 points for these circles. They're going to be vertical. These 2 circles will be horizontal, and does that? Okay. Here's another issue that we just ran into. It's saying that the sketch is overdefined. So what that means is when you did either dimension or a constraint, I'm just going to undo to make it go away. It can't resolve it. What you've already given it conflicts with what you're trying to give it. And in this case, we're saying that this point, and this point are all trying to be horizontal. And that's because I forgot to deselect this point. So you can either control select the point there, or it'll be in the list that you can find it and unselect it. So I'm going to say that those 2 are horizontal, and now it's not a problem. So we can call these 2 vertical. Oh, and that's another problem. Well, that's wrong. I think I know what the problem is. What? We may have selected the 3 again. That's probably what happened. So just those 2. Yeah, there we go. That one's vertical. So now we can say we want all of these circles to be equal. That's easy. And just to show you another example of the overdefined. So let's say I want so this side's 24. I want to make sure that this side's 24 as well. Right here. Okay, so we have this little issue. It's asking if we want to make it dimension driven or not. So what this means is, if you say make this dimension driven, is you're not going to be able to change the value. Any other values you change around will update this one, so you can still see what it is if you want to know, but you're not going to be able to directly influence the other ones. And then it'll turn gray, like that, and it'll change accordingly. Or, if you want to break Solidworks, you can say, I want to leave this dimension driving, so it, like these can change the distance. I want the same thing to happen with this one. Say OK, and now things have turned yellow. So that means things are overdefined. And the reason why they're overdefined is that we know that the distance between this circle and this circle are on the same horizontal line. And this circle and this circle are on the same horizontal line. Which means that if there's 24 millimeters between these 2 circles, there's also going to be 24 millimeters between these 2 circles. And you can't define it twice, basically. So I'm going to delete that if I can't. Oh, I'm still in Smart Dimension, that's why. Going to delete that, and all is good. There we go, exit sketch. And one final thing, because I think I forgot to change the size of the hole. Whoops. So another really powerful thing in SolidWorks that you can do is very easily you can say, okay, this hole that's 6 millimeters, I want it to be 5 millimeters now. And actually, you know what? Let's make this 12 millimeters because we can, and we'll make this 20. Why not? Actually, that looks kind of weird. But very easily, you can go back and adjust your part. So instead of having to redesign your part every single time if it doesn't work, you can use the Smart Dimension and it'll go back very, very simple. So I'm actually going to put it back because it's kind of weird. But feel free to your part. And then another thing you may notice is, actually first, let me do the fillet. So I also want to change the fillet to 7.5 millimeters. And actually this happened last time. I forgot to point it out. But the part's gone. Like, that's weird, because we have a full part here, and I just want to edit the fillet, and now it's all gone. So what's happening with that is that it's this, what's it called? The feature tree. So SolidWorks is going step by step, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you're telling it, I want to make the boss, then I want to do the fillet, then the cut, and another boss, and the fillet. And all of these features are stacked on top of each other. So although your this fillet right here, actually, this cut has and this boss extrude have nothing to do with each other. You made this one second, so it needs to make sure it comes second. So that's especially important because if you're, say, editing the base and the holes are based on the base, then the holes are gonna where are they gonna go? That was probably a excessive explanation. Right, that's what I was gonna do. So take the fillet, edit. It goes back in time, and I want this to be 7.5, and it's gonna change all of them, and there we go. And you can achieve a very similar thing with the rollback right here. So I want to roll back to there, or there, or there, and another couple final little tiny things. Say that you have a feature such as this fillet that you don't want. You can right click on it and click on suppress, and it's just going to disappear. It's going to pretend like you never made it. Naming parts is always important, so you can do right click feature properties and name it base. I'm not going to bother naming all of mine. You can hit F2. F2, there you go, that's rename. Or if it's selected like this, you can click on it, and it will, if it wants to, well, okay, there we go, it'll rename. And then a final thing is saving. That's important. Control S, save as, and we will save this right here. I've done this a lot, so this is going to be the fourth one, version 4, exactly the same as all the other ones. And that is all. You have made your first part. You have trudged through the not many hours, it's not been that long, but the lengthy tutorial to make this little part, and you've done it. Congratulations, you did a great job, I am sure. And that wraps it up for this, so bye-bye. I will see you in lesson 2, and we're going to be talking about assemblies, so putting these parts together. Bye.